Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. An original adaptation written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge. Part 18. The Balance. In the wake of Lady Bertilac's departure, Gawain stared at the door through which she had left for some time. He still did not understand what was going on here, but he knew he was in a great deal of danger if he misstepped even a little. A large part of him wanted to leave the castle then and there, but he knew his injuries would hold him back a little while longer, and even if they weren't a factor, he needed Lord Bertilac to tell him the location of the Green Chapel so he could finally fulfill his oath and face the Green Knight. If he tried to leave early, he knew it would only lead to questions. Difficult questions, said the voice in his head. Questions best left unasked. For now, it seemed he was stuck. He washed and dressed mechanically, pleased to note that his injuries were mending to the point that he barely had to think about his movements anymore. There were still some jolts of pain, though, and as he looked into the mirror he saw a face that was still a festival of welts and yellow-green bruises. Still some healing left to do, he told his reflection. Still, he was able to move at a slightly better pace, and he crossed to his door in a single stride, and then stopped. He remembered the last 2 mornings, where Lady Bertilac's maid, Mallory, had been directly outside waiting to shock him. "Time for a little retribution," said his inner voice, and fixing his most fearsome expression on his face, he wrenched the door open as quickly as he could, only to find the corridor completely empty. There was no sign of Mallory waiting for him. In fact, there was no sign of anyone. Once again, the odd feeling that the castle was too still and silent, without the usual bustling business a castle should have, crept over him. More alarmingly, if Mallory was not waiting for him there, then where was she? Was she lying in wait to ambush him? The thought left him quite unnerved, and he set off from his rooms at an extremely cautious pace. At every turn he imagined he could see her lurking in every shadow and waiting to pounce. "You're aware you fought an actual dragon and survived?" asked the voice in his mind, and Gawain stopped short. Suddenly this was all very ridiculous. Here he was, a knight of the Round Table in the bloom of youth, battle-hardened, dragon-slayer and trollsbane, Sir Gawain of the Green Axe, and he was jumping at the very thought of an old lady. He straightened his spine and turned to head down to the main hall. "Are you well this morning?" came a youthful voice, and Gawain yelped in fear as he simultaneously tried to sprint forward whilst looking behind him. His heart thundered as he marshalled his body well enough to find the source of the sound, and, of course, there she was, those black eyes gleaming up at him from her shriveled, shrunken face. "Why must you do that?" asked Gawain, finally frustrated enough to abandon all semblance of collected calm. Mallory gave no answer. Instead, she did something far more unsettling. She smiled. Wrinkled lips rolled back on teeth that, far from being the hideous yellow Gawain had expected, were a pure, pearly white. The smile reached her eyes in a way that on any other face might be warm and welcoming. On this one, though, it was not. Her dark eyes drew into the stare a hunting cat gives to prey it's beginning to prowl for. It was a predator's smile, plain and simple, and Gawain felt shivers run up his spine like a legion of long-legged spiders were leading a parade towards his neck. "Just inquiring after your well-being," the crone replied, and then the smile fell from her face, and that same dispassionate glare that Gawain had seen before replaced it. Without another word, she turned and left Gawain gaping after her. Not sure what else to do, Gawain decided to explore more of the castle. With his mobility improving, he made his way outdoors to the stables, and there he found his faithful friend Gringolet. "Hello there," he greeted the horse, and wished he'd brought an apple to offer him. He settled for letting the horse nuzzle at his hand for a while. "You've a fine animal there," said a voice from the corner, and Gawain turned to see a ruddy-faced old stable hand casting an appraising eye over Gringolet. "He is indeed," said Gawain, "and he's earned rich rewards of me 100 times over." "A good horse'll do that," said the old man with a kindly grin. "I tend to find they look after us far more than we look after them many's the time." "I can't help but agree," said Gawain. "Listen," he went on, "I'm still a bit bruised for the saddle, but could you or one of your team take him out for a good hard run? Shan't do him well to be cooped up for long." He knew he was asking a favour, but he did not expect the look of alarm on the man's face. "Well," he said in a voice of consideration, "I can take him out over the castle grounds around the forest ring, if that's enough for you." "Oh, he'll need far more than that," said Gawain. "A good 10 miles or more at least. You'll need to take him right out through the forest." At this, the man's pink face blanched. "Leave the castle grounds?" he stammered. I couldn't. It's not... I mean, why would I want to do that?" Gawain was shocked. But then he did not know this man, and perhaps there was a good reason for his alarm. "You never know what road another man has been forced to walk," said his inner voice. "Of course," he told the horseman. "The tree ring will be plenty, thank you." At this, the man's face recovered its sun-kissed glow. "Happily, sir. It would be my pleasure. Is there anything else he cares to enjoy?" "A few apples, if you can find them at this time of year," he said hopefully. "Not a problem, sir. I think you'll find the trees are still very much laden with apples for your horse's pleasure." "This far into winter," replied Gawain. "That's a rare apple tree indeed that can hold fruit this late." The stable-hand's face drained again, and he began to mutter, "Well, it's a special species of the master's, you see," before excusing himself. Gawain watched him go. "People here are very slightly unusual," said his inner voice, and Gawain couldn't disagree. He left the stables, only to run headlong into Lord Bertilac returning from his hunt. He had 2 beautiful great hounds with him who followed faithfully at his feet. "Gawain!" bellowed the big man. "Right glad I am to see you up and about, getting some fresh air, I see. Well, we shall have you in the saddle soon enough, I'll be bound." "Indeed, my lord," Gawain replied. "In fact, I was checking on Gringolet just now. Your hands are taking good care of him, I see. His coat is fair gleaming, though he needs a good long run to shake the cobwebs off." "No dust-gatherer him, eh?" barked Bertilac. "No, coursing creatures are built to run, and it should not be denied them." "Your stable-hand seemed reluctant to take him beyond the tree-ring," said Gawain, hoping he was not getting the man in trouble. "Is it not a safe place among the trees and beyond?" "Safe?" chuckled Bertilac. "Why, that is something you would know far better than most of them, Gawain. The truth is, many of these people have not strayed beyond the borders of the castle for most of their lives." Gawain thought this was very odd indeed. Even in Camelot, which was almost a city in itself, the townsfolk would still trek far afield for trade, or to see friends or family, or just for the sheer joy of the land. "Do they not grow weary of the same surroundings, my lord?" he asked. "Weary?" asked Bertilac, as if the thought could not be more ridiculous. "Goodness no, why should they? All they need is here. All they could ever require, all they could ever desire, is provided by me." A glow of pride entered his eyes, but Gawain still felt this was most unusual. "What is there out there that I cannot provide, eh? A good horse always knows its way home, I say, and so do my people." He clapped Gawain warmly on the shoulder. "Now, let me tell you of my success in the hunt today." Bertilac wrapped one meaty arm around Gawain's shoulder, and together they walked back to the castle as the big man regaled him with his tale of the hunt for a vast boar. "You should have seen him, Gawain," the lord exclaimed expansively. "A huge creature he was, and violent, deadly violent, downed 3 of my best huntsmen before I could subdue it. It happens, you know. Not often, but it happens. Most boars and sows will keep themselves to themselves and only threaten when threatened. But from time to time a creature grows large enough that it begins to think the forest and all its surroundings to be theirs. Becomes aggressive, roams around. I'd heard tell that this one was straying into realms it ought not, Gawain. Killing other males, even out of rutting season. Killing young humbug hoglets so the mothers will be ready to breed quicker." "Is the whole forest not its realm, my lord?" Gawain asked. "By which I mean, should we not leave well enough alone, and let the creature roam its territory? Even the largest boar shall not live forever, and soon it will be overthrown by another of its kind." "Well, let me ask you this, Gawain," the big man replied. "If you heard tell of a warrior who had grown powerful, and was taking over the land and territories of others nearby, would you leave that man and let him continue his reign of terror, knowing that eventually he would get old and be overcome by another?" "I suppose not," said Gawain. "I would feel it's my duty to bring such a man to justice." "Exactly," Bertilac enthused, "because the balance of society is surprisingly delicate and its preservation is vital. The same is true of the forest." "But nature is not quite the same, surely?" asked Gawain. The creatures of the forest may occasionally stray beyond their realm, but they lack the intelligence of man, and so they lack the cruelty of men with it." "Ah," said Bertilac, "there you may be right. The creatures of creation lack the cruelty of men, and for that we can all be truly grateful. The mindless insensitivity of mankind, and its refusal to see the thoughtlessness of its own actions, shall never cease to amaze me." He trailed off for a moment, seemingly lost in visions of the thoughtlessness of mankind, and a look of concentrated anger crossed his face, blended with a bone-weary sadness and regret. "This man feels deeply," said the voice in Gawain's head. Bertilac shook himself and continued, "And yet, even in nature, the balance is delicate, and must be carefully preserved. Those of us who have the strength to do something in preservation of that balance are honour-bound to do so. That's what it is to be a steward. My actions may prove right or wrong in the future, but to fail to take action, well, that would be far worse." Gawain reflected on this. He had not thought of the world with this idea of balance before, or certainly not in those terms. Mostly he'd just known, or perhaps assumed, that he was on the right course, or maybe under the right cause. "Arthur is definitely a man in search of balance," said the voice in his head, and Gawain was relieved to think that the wise king's commands had, most likely, held the need for balance foremost in their intentions. "But what of other men who follow other lords?" the voice went on. "And even Arthur is not infallible. He wished he'd had time to learn all these lessons earlier in life, but now they came too late. His time to meet with the Green Knight was looming on the very near horizon, and he did not think there was likely to be any need of life lessons after that rendezvous." His mental discomfort must have shown on his face, because Bertilac interrupted his thoughts. "I see this has given you much to think on, Gawain," said the big man, uncharacteristically soft. "Come, do not let it trouble your mind overmuch. Too many decisions at once will set a man doing backflips in his brain. For now, all you must decide is what to do with the prize I've brought you, for it surely is yours as per our agreement. Now," he said, returning to his usual tone, "what have you won in the castle this day, which must be passed on to me?" Gawain's racing mind came to an abrupt standstill as he remembered the agreement and the approach Lady Bertilac had made to him this morning. "Oh, goodness," said the voice in his head, remembering the anger he'd seen on Bertilac's face just a moment ago, and hoping he would not see it repeated and aimed squarely at him. "Here we go." "Well, my lord," he began, "you have gifted me this fine boar, which I'm sure we will all enjoy the fruits of, though I'm afraid my prizes are not ones to nourish the body, but the soul." Reaching up, he placed his hands on either side of the big man's head and pulled him down towards him, kissing him not once, but twice. Once again, as he released Lord Bertilac, there was a moment of silence, and Gawain felt desperately afraid that he would pry for more information. But instead, a huge grin lit his features, and he threw his head back in a laugh. "Ha ha! By St. Giles, you truly are a man of mysterious marvels," the lord exclaimed, his green-grey eyes twinkling. "What gift you have received and now duly passed on to me. Well, we shall keep our bargain one day more, for I have business in the forest tomorrow as well. For now, though, I am ravenous. Let us eat." Sweeping his arm around Gawain again, he led him back into the castle halls for more feasting and festivities. As the day ended and Gawain hauled himself into bed, he could not help but reflect on the man and wished he'd met him sooner. "When I get home," said Gawain to himself, "I shall make an effort to mirror the good that I've seen in this man." But at that moment he was hit by the horrible remembrance that he would, most likely, not live to see home again. It landed like a fresh blow, and he was suddenly struck by the injustice of it all. He lay awake, thinking on all the lessons he wished he'd learned sooner in life that he would now not have time for. Eventually he got out of bed and hunched by the fire, letting the movement of the flames distract his eyes while his mind wandered where it would. He knew that sleep would be a stranger to him that night. Thank you for listening. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is a Settle Stories commission. Written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge. Story consultant was Miriam Sarin. Music was Tectonic by Saedra, downloaded via Uppbeat. It was a Parable Arts production.